working on the emotions related to suicide in the medieval world. And so this is a project that I'm undertaking with Chief Investigator Juanita Rice. And we're looking at suicide and the emotions related to suicide. That is the impulse to suicide as well as reactions to suicide. And we're trying to discover these emotional impulses through legal sources.
I work on execution ballads from roughly the 16th century to about the late 19th century. And I look at the use of song in accounts of crime and punishment across early modern Europe.
Bodies in distress, what we tried to do was use artists as intermediaries. So to get artists in and have them reimagine the texts that Una and Rebecca work on and engage with their research and ultimately produce works that would allow the public to see what we do.
My practice is self-performative, so I use myself in my artwork. And the area that I sort of look at is very much the convergence of two opposing aesthetics, which is the highly beautified body, or the aesthetically appealing body, and that which is somehow other to it, so the macabre, the horrific, the uncanny body.
Carolyn McKay's work constructs sort of responses to the way that meaning and narrative is created in legal cases through the statements of witnesses and murderers, and specifically statements about the victims who died.
Well, Grace Turner is a student at Newcastle Conservatorium of Music, and we brought her in order to sing the execution ballads which Una researches.
I needed to explain to her the context of, she'd obviously never come across such a thing.
I mean, that's Fortune by Foe is easily the most used tune for execution ballads in 17th century, but by far. So it's like absolutely everyone would have known it, and you can when you hear it, you go, Fortune by Foe, And there's an argument that it maybe was in the 16th century was a bit more poppy, but if that's the word. But
died a true repentant soul, that I am she whose deeds are black and foul. Then take it, wives, be.
And I'm really interested in how ballads would have been performed. They've been studied so long as just literary texts, as kind of dry textual documents, and I want to make them come alive again.
Going back in time and trying to discover how people felt, how they would have felt, what their emotional kind of experience was like, is a difficult task.
I don't have any access to suicide notes from the medieval period. Suicide notes don't exist from the Middle Ages. So all we have are those second-hand, third-hand accounts written in sort of pro forma legal jargon. And so to me, to get at the emotional resonances behind those statements, you've got so many layers to pass through. And I think Carolyn's art, to me, seems to symbolize those layers quite well and just throw up the difficulties of trying to access emotions there.
Felonia de Se.
Henry de la Thorne, suffering from an acute fever, without custody existing in his room, arose, left, and drowned himself in the port of the sea. The first finder comes and is not suspected, nor is anyone else. Judgment, Felonia de Se.
I think when you have purely academic research, obviously there's a level of rigour which has to go into that, and maybe also an element of being impartial to the research that they're actually undertaking. I think as an artist, your responsibility is slightly different to that. You are in the business of really entertaining people, shifting that information slightly in a way that is a little bit more emotive for the viewer. So you're not just presenting facts, you're maybe trying to recreate from those facts the emotional aspect to them. So if, for example, we're dealing with something as you know, quite sad and serious as suicide, obviously it needs to be dealt with quite delicately, but there is something important about bringing to the public an element of the intrigue and the macabreness and the fascination, you know, for want of better description, that maybe comes with those sorts of tragedies.
Well, we were really excited when we found out that the venue was going to be the lockup, because it's a really atmospheric old police lockup with its own padded cell.
I apologise if I step on anybody.
Let not your tongues o'ersway true reason's bound, which in your rage your utmost rancour sounds. A woman that is wise should seldom speak, unless discreetly she her words repeats.
And then after Grace's performance, we had a discussion panel.
People were desperate to ask questions, and they were really interesting questions. People were really involved with what we were doing. Working with artists has been really interesting because it can take you from perhaps a straightforward historical approach to something where you're just looking for, you know, the facts, and it can make you think in a slightly altered way.